They were once a happy, affluent, extended family. The children were healthy, and the neighbors were friendly and helpful. However, in just one night, an axe in the dark took all of that away, leaving 8 members of the family, from the elderly to the young, to share the same tragic fate. This event cast a long-lasting shadow over the small village. So what happened? Who was heartless enough to destroy this family's happiness? Let's dive into today's case. It's sure to leave you with much to ponder once the story concludes. Welcome to Crime Documentary Files. On the morning of August 14, 2004, in Ming Xing village, Shui County, Shanxi Province, China, a middle-aged woman named Cheng went to Mr. Yang's house to borrow some kitchen tools. As she arrived at the gate, Mrs. Cheng noticed that the Yang family hadn't woken up yet. However, the gate was not closed. Curious, she stepped into the yard and was hit by a strong, unpleasant smell of blood. The door to the house was wide open, and upon closer inspection, she saw what seemed to be bodies lying on the floor. It appeared to be Mr. Yang's entire family. Mrs. Cheng screamed, drawing a crowd. They quickly alerted the local police. Even though no one had entered the house, the smell of blood and the bodies on the floor indicated a grim scene inside. Within 15 minutes, the police arrived and cordoned off the area. The victims were identified as 8 members of the Yang family, including Mr. and Mrs. Yang, their 2 sons, 2 daughters-in-law, and 2 grandchildren, who were the children of their youngest son. The victims ranged in age from 4 to 80 years old, with the time of death estimated between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. At the scene, the police observed that the victims had been brutally attacked with an axe. Each body bore numerous wounds, both on the chest and back, as well as fatal injuries to the neck. In the living room, they found the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Yang, their youngest son, and his wife. The bodies of the 2 young grandchildren and the older son were in the bedroom. The older son's wife was found in the kitchen. The police noted that the older son's clothes were disheveled and torn, indicating a struggle with the assailant. The other victims appeared to have been attacked suddenly, with fatal blows incapacitating them before they could react. Strangely, the body of the youngest daughter-in-law was not intact. The killer had taken her head. The police quickly searched the area around the scene and discovered the murder weapon, an axe, left inside the house. Was this a sign of panic or a deliberate attempt to taunt the police? Further investigation was needed to uncover the truth. There were no signs of the house being ransacked. Valuables such as necklaces and rings were still on the victims, indicating that the murderer did not kill them for robbery. This suggests that the perpetrator was either someone known to the Yang family or someone with a grudge against them, capable of such brutal actions. The police immediately identified a group of potential suspects and began investigating the relationships surrounding the family members. Additionally, a small team of officers worked tirelessly to find the missing head of the female victim. Neighbors reported that the Yang family had always been kind, friendly, and well-liked in the village. If there was any chance of enmity, it could only be connected to the youngest son and his wife. The youngest son, Yang Yingwen, was a pharmacist and owned a small pharmacy in town. His wife, Wu Xiaojun, had been married to him for over 5 years, but they had no children together. The 2 children in the family were from Yang Yingwen's previous marriage. Wu Xiaojun had also been married before, but her family had forced her to divorce her first husband before she married Yang Yingwen. Why were these 2 considered problematic? They had frequent disputes with various people, from family members to neighbors. About 5 years ago, Yang Yingwen had accused a neighbor of assaulting his wife, which led to the neighbor's imprisonment for a time. Prior to that, during his divorce proceedings, Yang Yingwen fiercely contested for custody of his children, causing significant resentment from his ex-wife's family. Her brother even threatened Yang Yingwen several times without success. As for Wu Xiaojun, while she did not have direct conflicts with anyone, her ex-husband was deeply attached to her. Despite their separation, he repeatedly visited the Yang household to see Wu Xiaojun, even after being beaten by Yang Yingwen. This prompted the police to investigate these 3 suspects, starting with the neighbor Yang Yingwen had sent to prison, Jian Xue Liang. Historically, the 2 families had a good relationship. Jian Xue Liang, a tall and physically robust man, often engaged in manual labor. He had a virtuous and kind wife, and they had children together, leading what should have been a happy life. However, after Wu Xiaojun married into the Yang family, Jian Xue Liang began to show interest in her, which started the troubles. 5 years ago, Yang Yingwen was a small-time pharmacist, not yet well known, so he often went into the mountains to collect herbs, leaving him frequently away from home. This absence gave Jian Xue Liang opportunities to approach Wu Xiaojun. On September 12, 1999, Jian Xue Liang went to Yang Yingwen's house and entered Wu Xiaojun's bedroom under the pretext of watching cable TV because his TV was broken. Once in the bedroom, Jian Xue Liang began touching Wu Xiaojun without saying a word. Wu Xiaojun struggled to resist, but she couldn't overcome Jian Xue Liang's superior strength. Her clothes were torn, and she was scratched in multiple places. If you're wondering where the rest of the Yang family was, they lived nearby and usually gathered for dinner at Mr. Yang's house. That night, when Yang Yingwen returned home, he saw his wife's devastated expression, her eyes red from crying, and the torn pieces of her clothes on the floor. Realizing something terrible had happened, Yang Yingwen urgently asked what had occurred. Wu Xiaojun tearfully recounted the assault by their neighbor. The two families had been good neighbors, and Jian Xue Liang, with his tall stature and generally good nature, had never caused any trouble before. Shocked and enraged by what had happened, Yang Yingwen grabbed a hoe and went to confront Jian Xue Liang. However, due to Jian Xue Liang's size and strength, Yang Yingwen was overpowered and beaten. On the night of September 14, 1999, Yang Yingwen finally reported the assault on his wife to the police. He explained that he hadn't called the police immediately because he feared retaliation from Jian Xue Liang. However, he worried that if he didn't report it, Jian Xue Liang might continue his malicious behavior. The next day, the police investigated the scene, found clear evidence, and arrested Jian Xue Liang. Jian Xue Liang admitted to the assault, but claimed that he and Wu Xiaojun had previously had consensual affairs twice. According to him, Wu Xiaojun had been willing at those times. Jian Xue Liang also claimed he had given Wu Xiaojun 70 yuan, which she accepted, but then refused to be intimate with him. Wu Xiaojun firmly denied ever having an affair with Jian Xue Liang or taking money from him. She stated that he had tried to seduce her multiple times, even using money as an incentive, but she had always refused. Determining the truth about their past interactions was challenging since both had their own versions of events. However, most friends and family believed the two were having an affair. Jian Xue Liang's wife even accused Wu Xiaojun of being a homewrecker who lured other women's husbands. Regardless of any past consensual relationship, this time it was clear that Jian Xue Liang had forced himself on Wu Xiaojun against her will. As a result, the court sentenced Liang to 5 years in prison. Due to good behavior, he was released a year early in 2003. Upon his release, Jian Xue Liang was surprised to find that his wife had not abandoned the family during those 4 years. Instead, she had been dutifully caring for her parents, looking after the children, and working hard to support the family. Because of Jian Xue Liang's tarnished reputation, his wife couldn't secure a well-paying or easy job, forcing her to labor intensively to make ends meet. Her appearance had noticeably aged. Jian Xue Liang's son's life had been equally tough. His classmates at school knew his father was a convicted rapist, leading to social isolation and bullying. When Jian Xue Liang returned, he promised his wife that they would build a better life together. Neighbors witnessed his earnest efforts to find work and support his family after his release. This raised the police's suspicion. Could he have killed the Yang family as an act of revenge? Although many neighbors dismissed this idea, the first step was to obtain a statement from the suspect. The police quickly went to Jian Xue Liang's house, but his wife informed them that he had been away for several days and was not currently home. The family was too poor to afford a phone, so they had no way to contact him. They would have to wait for his return to get his statement. To avoid wasting time on the investigation, the Shanxi police contacted the Henan Province Police to investigate the second suspect, Wu Xiaojun's ex-husband. This ex-husband, identified as Chao Junbao, 38, was living in Henan Province. About 7 years earlier, Wu Xiaojun and Qiao Junbao had registered their marriage. However, her family, especially her parents, did not support the union, believing Qiao Junbao was too poor to provide for her. They demanded she leave him or face being cut off from the family. The couple eventually divorced. Shortly after, Wu Xiaojun met Yang Yingwen and quickly remarried. This made Qiao Junbao feel betrayed, believing the family's opposition was merely an excuse for her to be with another man. As a result, he harbored a mixture of love and hatred for Wu Xiaojun and her family. Although Qiao Junbao had since started a new family, his resentment persisted. He had repeatedly visited Wu Xiaojun's house to confront her, but she refused to see him. Wu Xiaojun even called her husband and brother-in-law to beat him, causing him great humiliation. To prevent neighbors from gossiping, Jun claimed that Qiao Junbao kept visiting because he was still in love with her and wanted to rekindle their relationship. Do you think Qiao Junbao could have killed the Yang family to avenge his lost honor? The police suspected that, given his long-standing resentment and frequent visits to Wu Xiaojun, he could have had the motive to commit the crime. At this moment, the police received information that Qiao Junbao had traveled to Shanxi on August 12th and had returned on the night of August 13th, the same day the Yang family was murdered. To answer the police's questions, Qiao Junbao explained that his visit to Shanxi was like his previous ones. He wanted to see Wu Xiaojun one last time. This time, he hoped to get an apology from her and then move on with his life. However, the journey from Henan province to Shanxi was long. He arrived around noon on August 13th, so he decided to stay at a nearby inn to rest before visiting her in the afternoon. But that afternoon, he received a call from his wife informing him that their son had been in an accident and he needed to go to the hospital immediately. Consequently, Qiao Junbao had to abandon his plans, buy a ticket, and return home that night. The police visited the inn where Qiao Junbao stayed, and the innkeeper confirmed that he had not left his room from the time he checked in until around 5 p.m. when he packed his bags and checked out. At the ticket office, the police confirmed that Qiao Junbao was there around 5:30 p.m. waiting for his train until the evening. With such a solid alibi, Qiao Junbao was cleared of suspicion. Now, the only remaining suspect was the one the Yang family's neighbors believed to be the true culprit. The third suspect was the ex-brother-in-law of Yang Yingwen, named Zhou Shou, 27 years old. Zhou Shou had a hot temper and a criminal record for theft and assault. During the time his sister and Yang Yingwen were married, Zhou Shou held a grudge against his brother-in-law. When the couple divorced, Zhou Shou was in prison and couldn't help his sister gain custody of her children. In early 2004, Zhou Shou was released from prison and returned home. Seeing his sister in a depressed state, crying every night because she missed her children, Zhou Shou was deeply distressed. His sister's appearance deteriorated, and she found it difficult to form new relationships. Zhou Shou decided to confront Yang Yingwen to reclaim his sister's children. From then on, Zhou Shou would frequently visit Yang Yingwen's house, causing disturbances and demanding that Yang Yingwen let the children visit their mother, or better yet, give custody back to his sister. Naturally, Yang Yingwen refused. Zhou Shou's hot temper led to physical altercations, and he often threatened Yang Yingwen, promising to make him and his family pay if he didn't relinquish custody. The police then went to Zhou Shou's house to take his statement. However, they were met only by his sister and elderly parents. His sister stated that while Zhou Shou had a hot temper, he deeply cared for his family. Recently, Zhou Shou had rarely been home, spending most of his time with a gang. When he did come home, it was only for a few minutes to grab some things before leaving again. On one occasion, after seeing his sister cry, Zhou Shou loudly vowed to make the Yang family regret and bring her children back. Despite this, his sister firmly believed he couldn't have committed such a heinous act. The last time she saw him, he had a train ticket to Chongqing dated August 11th. When asked, Zhou Shou said he planned to work there and save money to hire a lawyer to fight for his sister's custody. Thus, out of the 3 suspects, 2 had solid alibis. The police now deployed over 500 officers to search the area and set up roadblocks. Remember the axe, the murder weapon found at the scene? The police had it tested for fingerprints. By that evening, the results came back. The fingerprints on the axe did not belong to Qiao Junbao or Zhou Shuo. This meant they had to be Jian Xue Liang's. The police returned to Jian Xue Liang's house. Upon searching the house, his wife mentioned that he often left for work without informing her, sometimes for several days. She assumed this was another one of those times. Taking this seriously, the police formed multiple teams to search the area and set up roadblocks. A special task force was established, and local government officials provided specific guidance and financial support for the investigation. Within a day, the reward for information increased from 10,000 to 50,000 yuan, equivalent to nearly $7,000. Over 10,000 wanted notices were issued, and the massacre was continuously broadcast on TV. Time was of the essence. No one could guarantee that Jian Xue Liang wouldn't continue his killing spree in the coming days. The victims' ages ranged from 4 to 80 years, indicating that the killer did not discriminate by age. On August 18, 2004, a 71-year-old man from a neighboring village reported seeing a strange man who resembled the suspect. The man, Xia Bangguo, lived with his wife and son in the next village. On the morning of August 18th, his son went to work early, and his wife went to the market, leaving Mr. Bangguo to cook noodles and hang laundry. When Mr. Bangguo returned from the yard to the kitchen, he was startled to see a tall, disheveled man sitting at the table, eating noodles. From about 13 feet away, he loudly asked, "Who's eating my noodles?" The man, with a sullen expression, replied, "It's me." Mr. Bangguo found the man's clothes strange and hesitated, then heard him ask for his surname. Feeling uneasy, Mr. Bangguo lied and said his surname was Zhang. After this exchange, the man nodded and walked towards the forest. Suspecting something was off, Mr. Bangguo called the police. The police quickly arrived, and Mr. Bangguo's description closely matched Jian Xue Liang. However, they needed to capture him to be certain. The police and Mr. Bangguo searched the mountain but found nothing and continued checking along the road until dusk. Exhausted, the team agreed to rest before continuing. At that moment, an officer spotted a figure walking along the road, a tall man with a snakeskin bag. On closer inspection, the man's build resembled Jian Xue Liang. The team immediately surrounded and apprehended the man, who indeed was Jian Xue Liang. Facing the police, Jian Xue Liang confessed immediately. He then recounted the events clearly. About 5 years earlier, when Yang Yingwen married Wu Xiaojun, Jian Xue Liang found himself infatuated with her. The two families were close, frequently visiting each other. With Yang Yingwen often away for days collecting herbs in the mountains, his young wife felt lonely. Noticing Wu Xiaojun's loneliness, Jian Xue Liang began finding excuses to visit her, and over time, they developed feelings for each other. Jian Xue Liang offered money for a relationship, and to his surprise, Wu Xiaojun agreed immediately. Thus began their secret affair, unknown to anyone else. Until one day, on September 12, 1999, Jian Xue Liang felt full of energy and wanted to visit Wu Xiaojun to satisfy his desires. He told her he wanted to come in to watch TV, and she agreed. Thinking it would be just like any other time, Jian Xue Liang suggested they have sex, but Wu Xiaojun shook her head. At that point, he lost control and forcibly assaulted her despite her attempts to push him away. After being imprisoned, he realized his wrongdoing and tried to reform, hoping to start anew and provide a better life for his family. However, reality once again turned him into a monster. After Jian Xue Liang was released, he lived under the shadow of constant gossip. Although many people in the village didn't openly point fingers at him, they whispered behind his back and avoided him. When his employer at the construction site learned about his criminal record, he stopped hiring Jian Xue Liang. Consequently, Jian Xue Liang often couldn't find work, and even when he did, it was labor-intensive jobs with very low pay. In contrast, Wu Xiaojun's family was thriving. They opened another clothing store in town, and their business was booming. Learning about Wu Xiaojun's prosperous situation filled Jian Xue Liang with rage. He blamed the Yang family for his and his family's misery while they were living comfortably. On the night of August 13, 2004, Jian Xue Liang sat with a glass of wine, reminiscing about the past. The more he thought, the angrier he became, convinced that his current circumstances were entirely the Yang family's fault. If Wu Xiaojun hadn't called the police, he wouldn't have spent 4 years in prison and faced discrimination after his release. Fueled by alcohol, Jian Xue Liang grabbed an axe and broke into the Yang household. Wu Xiaojun and her husband, Yang Yingwen, were the first to be killed. The family had just finished dinner and were caught off guard. Jian Xue Liang's attack left all 4 victims fatally wounded where they stood. He then moved to the bedroom and attacked Yang Yingwen's 2 young children. Hearing the commotion, Yang Yingwen's brother, who was in the kitchen with his wife, rushed to help. Jian Xue Liang immediately struck him down. Finally, he moved to the kitchen and killed Yang Yingwen's sister-in-law. Jian Xue Liang returned to the living room to ensure everyone was dead. He then used the axe to decapitate Wu Xiaojun and threw her head away while fleeing. His actions could no longer be excused by drunkenness or anger. This was premeditated murder, evident from his deliberate actions and the sequence of events. After killing the family, Jian Xue Liang panicked, discarded the axe, and fled into the mountains. When a neighbor discovered the gruesome scene, she was terrified and called the police. For 5 days in the mountains, he survived on spring water and wild plants. However, by August 18, 2004, 5 days after the incident, Jian Xue Liang was so hungry that he descended the mountain in search of food. He looked disheveled, like a beggar, and went straight to Xiaobangguo's house. The events unfolded just as Mr. Xiaobangguo recounted to the police, leading to Jian Xue Liang's capture. When the police asked where he had disposed of Wu Xiaojun's head, he said he wasn't sure, only that he had thrown it away along the road in the dark while fleeing. The police quickly organized a search using officers and sniffer dogs around the mountainous area where he had been hiding. On September 14, 2004, Jian Xue Liang was publicly tried. He confessed to the murders and was sentenced to death, along with an order to pay 12,000 yuan, approximately 1,600, in compensation to the plaintiffs. About half a month later, Jian Xue Liang was executed. Jian Xue Liang's wife listened to her husband's interrogation, her face clearly showing her heartbreak. Jian Xue Liang's father, who was in poor health, shook his head and said, "I am to blame for not raising my son properly." He knew that for Jian Xue Liang's heinous crimes, his son deserved the death penalty, and he might never see him again. He wished to attend the execution and bring some sweets for his son one last time. Regarding Jian Xue Liang's case, the police who initially monitored him for the rape charge found it unimaginable. Jian Xue Liang had behaved well and was honest during his time in prison. No one expected that after his release, he would commit such brutal acts against so many people. This covers the perpetrator and his family. But what about the victim's family? You might wonder, in the case above, 2 of the victims were Yang Yingwen's children. But what about his brother's children? In fact, there was one survivor of this massacre, named Yang Yan. Yang Yan was the daughter of Yang Yingwen's brother. She had just finished her college entrance exams when she heard the news of her family's death. She was heartbroken and couldn't sleep for nights. After the tragedy, Yang Yan lived with her aunt. Her biggest challenge was affording college without her family's support. The tuition alone was 8,000 yuan, not to mention living expenses. Yang Yan's father had been a construction contractor, and some people owed him money for various projects. However, after her father's death, those people refused to acknowledge the debts. Yang Yan and her uncle approached these debtors, but they denied owing any money. Fortunately, the local government stepped in to cover her tuition, allowing her to start college smoothly. Yang Yan initially wanted to attend Jian Xue Liang's trial, but had to catch a train to her school as the semester was starting. She regretted not witnessing the trial of the man who killed her family. The Yang family initially demanded compensation from Jian Xue Liang's family, but they had very little money. With her tuition issue resolved, Yang Yan decided not to pursue further compensation. The case of Jian Xue Liang has left us, as well as the residents of the village, with 2 critical questions. First, should we report criminals in the future? According to the villagers, back in 1999, there was a similar case in Hongwei village nearby where a family of 4 was murdered. The killer was initially a thief who frequently stole items like bicycles, motorcycles, and generators. A villager took him to court, and after serving his sentence, the thief sought revenge. He regularly extorted and caused trouble for the villager's family. When they could no longer meet his demands, he killed the entire family in retaliation. And now, the Jian Xue Liang case has just happened. This makes the villagers fear for their safety. If reporting criminals could lead to their families being wiped out, who would dare call the police? Wouldn't this just embolden the criminals, making them more arrogant and free to commit crimes? To address this issue, we can only hope that over time, the psychological barriers among the villagers will gradually be removed. The police must also work diligently to ensure public security and educate the community to prevent criminals from going unpunished. The second question is whether ex-convicts can reintegrate into society normally. This is a concern I had after researching this case. Ex-convicts often face discrimination. After all, they have done wrong. However, for those whose crimes weren't too severe and who have served their sentences, they may wish to make amends and start anew. Why shouldn't we give them a chance? After the Jian Xue Liang case, villagers became even more distrustful of ex-convicts, wanting to maintain a safe distance from those newly released from prison. Jian Xue Liang tried to reform and live a good life upon release, but ultimately failed and returned to crime. If other ex-convicts, having concealed their dark impulses while in prison, are granted early release, will they follow the same path as Jian Xue Liang? Will they commit more heinous acts after being released? Conversely, if an ex-convict sincerely tries to do good but is shunned by neighbors and society, will they eventually become embittered and seek revenge against society? However, it's important to remember that Jian Xue Liang's subsequent crimes cannot be excused or denied by these questions. What about you? Are you willing to give those who have committed crimes a chance to live and work like ordinary people? Please leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments below. Thank you for listening to today's case. Your views and contributions are immensely valuable and help us improve continuously. Goodbye, and see you in the next case. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Documentary Files.